Thousand Autumns, is a Meng Xi Shi novel. This is an audiobook made by fans for other fans. Disclaimer. The main couple of the story is made up of two men. If you don't like it, don't listen. Thank you. Remember, subscribe and click the bell to stay updated on all the new releases. Enjoy. Extra number 4. What sweetheart? Lubayashi sputtered. Shen Qiao shook his head, couldn't help laughing. It's nothing, I was just speaking carelessly, I shouldn't ask this kind of question. Lubayashi recovered, ran his knuckles through his hair. He thought he more or less knew what he was alluding to. Shen Daozang has cultivated since you were young, clear of mind and desire. I bet you haven't encountered much common life. Li Xiaoniangzi must have given you a fright. It's perfectly normal to not know what to do next. The two of them had fought side by side just now. Lubayashi had done an 180 of his earlier attitude, and seemed a lot more friendly. Truthfully, on this matter I have no response. There can't be that much love and romance in this world. Sweet murmurations. I was lucky enough to train in Zongnan sect. I only left the mountain and returned home at age 17. My parents arranged a marriage for me. I heard that the girl didn't know Wuzhong, but was brought up properly, was of good and kind character. Of course I agreed to my parents' request, so there was never the question of liking or not liking. After we got married, my wife diligently managed the household. I think extremely well of her. If you're going to talk romance, that's the stuff poets recite after they've eaten their meal and have nothing better to do. For those of us who traverse the Jianghu, each day we're beaten by the elements or fighting each other to survive. Back there, if Daozang had not accompanied us on this journey, then we likely would have succumbed right here. Shen Qiao, Luxiang need not thank me, since we are going the same way, we should watch out for each other. Lubayashi laughed. When we get to Jiankang, I must invite Daozang to a fancy meal, don't you dare refuse. Shen Qiao, that's great, I don't know anyone there, I'll be counting on Luxiang. Lubayashi, straightforward. Truth be told, when I first saw Daozang I thought you looked a little weak. I was afraid you were like those scholars, carrying a sword only as accessory. I didn't expect, tsk, your gongfu is probably stronger than my shifu's. Shen Qiao, Luxiang is too generous. Lubayashi, since Daozang is not a stranger I'll say it directly, a joke is a joke, but Li Xiaoniangzi is deeply enamored with Daozang, it's a good choice. These times are chaotic. Daozang's Wuzhong is enough for self-preservation, compared to wandering the Jianghu. What about receiving Li Xiaoniangzi in marriage, with the Li family's fortunes and support? Even if you can't be a hero, at least you'll be a rich son-in-law that can eat and dress without worry. Shen Qiao, smiling crying, Luxiang misunderstands, I have no untoward intentions towards Li Xiaoniangzi. My heart already belongs elsewhere, it's just that before it was all muddled, and I hadn't been able to look at things carefully. Back there it was as if Li Xiaoniangzi struck me directly over the head, that I came to a realization. Lubayashi, taken aback, so it's like this, no wonder you asked me this question. This sweetheart of Daozang's, what do they think of Daozang? Shen Qiao, a small frown. At first they kept pushing forward, I could only take every step back, later they seemed to be upset. Lubayashi, speechless, these days women are more daring than men. He turned the thought in his head, this Daozang was so charming, and had such strong Wuzhong, no wonder women would fall for him, that Li Xiaoniangzi had only seen him a few times, spending most of her day in the carriage, but was still willing to jump out and risk her life blocking that arrow? After all, Lubayashi was someone who had already crossed to the other side. He started giving Shen Qiao pointers. Women tend to be shy, It's not every day that she declares her intention, but you weren't willing to accept. After a few times, those with a thin face would be too ashamed to face you again. If you take the initiative and explain things to her, like bamboo meeting the axe, everything will be resolved. Shen Qiao's mouth twitched. That person's face is not very thin at all. Lu Baishi, laughing, that's even better, just say it directly. With Daozang's looks, the other is certain to bashfully accept, then you can go ahead to the girl's family and ask for her hand. Shen Qiao replied, they are quite arrogant, after that reception it will be hard for them to be willing to acquiesce again. Lu Baishi, that's easy, as long as they're human they'll have something they like, go along that vein, gift her something she likes, everything else will follow. Shen Qiao, earnestly learning, Lu Xiong please advise me. Lu Baishi, what about a hairpin? Don't women love accessories and precious gems? If her style is simple, then you can gift one of peachwood or jade. If she likes more glamour, then something gold or silver with encrusted gems. I tell you it's guaranteed to work. Shen Qiao thought of Yan Wushi's traveling clothes. All of it was overseen by his people. Even a hairpin on his head would be equivalent to a commoner's annual salary, and he didn't even pay it that much attention, so Shen Qiao shook his head. They don't care much for these objects. Lu Baishi, furrowing his brow, then food. The necessities of everyday life, there ought to be a preference. Shen Qiao thought about this, hesitating, they like tangren. But that was what Xie Ling liked. Does Yan Wushi also like eating tangren? Shen Qiao imagined Yan Wushi's arrogant face licking a tangren, immediately his own expression became very strange. Lu Baishi also found it strange, tangren, isn't that what little kids like to eat? Then coming to his own conclusion, was relieved again, Daozang's sweetheart is a young person. Shen Qiao coughed quietly, felt a bit guilty, I guess so. Lu Baishi thought to himself, his appearance definitely attracts Xiaoniangzi, didn't that Li Xiaoniangzi only need to see him a couple of times before being completely befuddled? Then that's even easier, the younger the age, the less the experience, a couple of words and you'll make her happy, it has to be said Shen Daozang, the wife has intention, and you are also inclined, but how come you didn't even find out what that Xiaoniangzi likes? Shen Qiao actually did know, but knowing it was still not helpful, they like to train, and challenge others in martial arts. In the Jianghu there was certainly no shortage of women obsessed with martial arts. Lu Baishi wasn't surprised, with Daozang's Wuzhong, if you wanted advise her, you would certainly have more than enough expertise. Shen Qiao rubbed his nose, I cannot beat them in a fight. Lu Baishi was shocked, women these days were something else, no wonder Shen Daozang kept pulling back, if it was me I also wouldn't be brave enough to marry this tigress. Then, he was running out of words, just try all of the strategies once, as the old saying goes, sincerity will surmount all, even rock and steel, there must be some truth to it, if she's also interested in you, even if the thing you gift her is not to her liking, she'll still see your intention. Shen Qiao also realized that there was no more to be gleaned, thank you Lu Xiong for the lesson. Lu Baishi saw that although his Wuzhong was impressive, in this matter he was totally clueless, and so gave him a lot of advice, he even told him about how he carried his wife around in their rooms, just because a woman has to keep up appearances in public, one is more serious than the next, but after the door is closed and with no audience, what's the harm in letting her have her way, our lives are only a brief couple of decades, it's not easy to meet someone you like, you have to cherish it. Shen Qiao held back his laughter, yes, I will remember. By this time everything had been more or less cleaned up, in order to hurry to the next town so they could rest, Everyone sped up their pace. Shen Qiao and Lu Baishi fell to the end of the procession, covering the group from the back. Their horses at a gallop, the wind flying by, no one said anything. They wouldn't have known that in the carriage another private conversation was happening. Li Xiaoniangzi, who should still be passed out, groaned and woke up. She asked the person beside her, "How did I do back there?" Li Niangzi spoke honestly, "It was somewhat exaggerated." Li Xiaoniangzi rolled her eyes at her. In order to have Shen Daozang realize his true intention, I had to really make a ruse of physical injury. If this feat leads to Shen Daozang's epiphany, then my injury will not have been in vain. Li Niangzi, sympathetic, "It must have been hard on you, you actually took this arrow." Li Xiaoniangzi, forlorn, "Isn't it the case, it hurts so much, but Shen Daozang is so amazing, if I don't make it convincing, he'll see right through it." Li Niangzi reassured her, "Never mind, you know this was our mission, the better we complete it, the better off we'll be. Zhongju is generous, he's certain to reward you well." After the bandit incident, everyone was on edge. If only they could arrive immediately in town, and avoid any further incidents. On account of Li Xiaoniangzi's injury, they stayed in town for a few more days. 2-3 meals a day plus lodgings was no small sum. Luckily the Li family was well off, and didn't take this additional cost to heart. Li Niangzi for her daughter to rest a couple more days didn't care for any sum. Even Shen Qiao received her multiple thanks for beating back the bandits. Li Niangzi didn't blame him for her daughter's injured body and injured heart, even forced a large sum of money onto Shen Qiao. Pushing onwards, their group finally after half a month arrived in Jiankang. After entering the city, the Li mother and daughter found their relatives. Everyone was supposed to go their separate ways, but Lu Baishi was very enthusiastic, dragged Shen Qiao through all of Jiankang, then he invited him to a meal, gave him his address, made Shen Qiao promise that he would pay him a visit in the future when he had time, only then did he bid farewell. After parting ways with Lu Baishi, Shen Qiao found the Beimanguan he had mentioned earlier, intending to stay there a couple of days. Instead he ran right into the court official with the emperor's decree summoning talented Daoists into the palace. Shen Qiao stood out from the others, so they approached him to inquire his history. Shen Qiao responded in kind. It was the same response he had given to Lu Baishi back then. The official was in a hurry to meet the quota demanded by the emperor, so they didn't inquire in any more detail. People were susceptible to outward appearances, and Shen Qiao's appearance definitely met the criteria for what most people considered celestial. "Can I ask Daozang, does your cultivation practice involve brewing elixirs?" Shen Qiao was about to say no, the words on his lips, he realized something, and took a turn. "My cultivation path is the heart's intention, it's only distantly related to the brewing of elixirs, but in the practice of reading people and places I do have some knowledge." The official, hearing that he had no expertise in elixirs, was a little disappointed, but hearing he could read people, was happy again. "Then, Daozang can divinate the future." Shen Qiao, modestly, "I know a thing or two." Official, "The current emperor is inclined towards the Daoist arts, he's looking for talented Daoists to advise him of common pitfalls. Is Daozang willing to accompany me into the palace to have an audience with the emperor? If the emperor likes you, what awaits Daozang is nothing less than a sea of riches." Shen Qiao coming to Chen, his purpose had been to get close to the new sovereign, to see how he compared against Yang Jian, who knew that as soon as he started getting sleeping somebody brought him a pillow. He was not close to Ruyan Ky. If he missed this opportunity, it would not be easy to get a second chance at such a forthright opportunity to meet the emperor. He was now firmly in the secular world, knew how to interact with people, and so he accepted it without much thought, but he couldn't appear too superior. it would only lead the official to underestimate him. So his expression revealed some hesitation as he said, "This poor one has made an oath to my forefathers, I have to recite the scriptures aloud multiple times a day, I have not yet completed my task for the day, it appears my fate with the emperor continues, perhaps on another day." The Ryu sects were very influential in the Chen dynasty, so within Jiankang there was no large Daoguan. This Beimanguan amongst all of the Daoguan was not the most ostentatious, having been oppressed for so long. The other Daoists upon hearing the summon from the emperor had all been extremely moved, their faces aglow, only this newcomer Daoist demonstrated equanimity. The official indeed seemed impressed with him, even the other Daoists from Beimanguan tried to convince him, "Dai, why don't you accept the invitation, you're a guest of Beimanguan after all, if the emperor flies into a rage and wants to blame someone, we'll suffer the disaster befalling all the fish in the pond." It was only then that Shen Qiao sighed, "Then I implore the official to lead the way." The court summoning Daoists, Shen Qiao wouldn't be the only one summoned. Once Shen Qiao accepted, his name was recorded on the registration. After 3 days, the official had amassed 10 or so Daoists who had fit the description. Shen Qiao and 2 other Daoists from Beimanguan were at that time ushered into the palace. The Chen palace was around the same size as the palace in Sui, but was much more ornate and refined in its details, displaying the splendor of Jiangnan. Most Daoists would never see such luxury in their lifetimes, although they tried hard to keep a straight face, their eyes revealed their surprise and delight. Shen Qiao and his group after entering the palace were brought into Wangxiandian. Inside on the left and right were 8 seats, mostly occupied, the last 3 seats near the door were naturally left for Shen Qiao's group. Shen Qiao had no wish to fight for seat order with the Beimanguan Daoists, he gave the 2 at the front to them, himself he sat on the seat closest to door, winning grateful glances from the other 2. Closest to the door meant the least highly regarded. The attendant declared, "The emperor has not yet arrived, everyone should stay calm and keep quiet." The Daoists of course wouldn't dare cause a ruckus, but small whispers were inevitable. Shen Qiao's gaze slid over his surroundings casually, when it fell on a particular person, his hair stood on end, and at first he thought his eyes had betrayed him. That person had his eyes closed feigning sleep, not interacting with the people around him, the image of aloofness, but in the next moment he opened his eyes, and looked in Shen Qiao's direction. Their eyes met, and the other looked away as if nothing had happened. End of the chapter. Stay tuned for more BL.